Hi, everybody. I'm Bryan Zellmer. Welcome to Artists on Lockdown. I'm the director of KU Presents at Kutztown University, and I'm coming to you from one of our large classroom spaces that is used for practice in our music department. I'm today's guest host, and I want to thank Steve Love for inviting me to be here today. And today we're going to be speaking with one of the stars of Ain't Misbehavin' and the CFO of Irving Street Rep, located in Newark, New Jersey. Can we bring in Ron Lucas? Ron, welcome. It's so great to meet you.
You as well. Everything going?
Great. Now, you're one of the stars of Ain't Misbehavin'. Can you tell us a little bit about the show real quick?
Oh, well, the show is a famous musical review of the music of Fats Waller. And it's been playing, it's made many careers, including Nell Carter, Andre DeShields, and many, many more. Ken Page were original cast members, so they're very famous now. And the show has been playing for years. It's sort of like the Black Sound of music. It tours the nation, and everybody loves it. It always sells out. So it's been
great. And we'll talk more about that in a minute, but I want to know how you got involved with this. Now, I know you're also a producer at a rep company. I mentioned Irving Street Rep. Can you just give us a little background about that company?
Well, Irving Street Rep, we've been in business for 20 years. And we started we had a singing group at first, and then we started to do Ain't Misbehavin' as the singing group. And it snowballed from there. Then we started doing other shows as well. Smokey Joe's Cafe, Five Guys Named Mo, Sophisticated Ladies, Your Arms Too Short to Box with God, and many shows like that, and some original shows as well.
So when you started out, was it all there in Newark, or did you actually begin touring right away?
Oh, we were touring right away because we layered on top of what the singing group tour schedule was. And we said, oh, we have this new offering for you. And that's how it snowballed. And
wonderful. I want to go back even further to find out how you got the bug. How did you first fall in love with the arts, with theater? Like, what was your inspiration? Were you in a musical family? I mean, how did this happen?
Well, my mother was a singer with her sisters, and they had a group called the Mill Sisters, and they would sing. But also, the bug really got me because her and my father were both into going to the theater in Washington, where I grew up. So we would go to the National Theater and see whatever was in town. Pearly was a big inspiration to me, as well as other shows that we went to see. But that really sticks in my mind as one of the things that said, oh, I want to do that. That looks like so much fun. And everybody was laughing at them. And so then also my mother, one of her side things was to make hats. So every year we would come to New York to get her new accoutrements for the hats that she liked to make for the church ladies. So we would of course see shows then when we were here, and I remember seeing The Wiz and those kinds of shows. And it was like it was over by then.
Yep. So did that prompt you to get involved in school productions or community theater?
Absolutely. Well, I was always in the church choir. And on top of that, whatever glee club or anything that was going on in school, I was always involved in that. And it snowballed from there. And I didn't really, you didn't think it as a profession, but as you get older, you're like, oh, okay, there's famous people that do that. I used to, when Sammy Davis or somebody would be on TV and we'd all run to the screen. Oh, there's a Black person on TV, run, come see. And so that's how that was the bug.
Very cool. So from there, did you go to college after school?
Yes, actually.
That was the route you took?
Yeah, absolutely. I was always like in the shows in high school. And I said, I told my drama teacher in my senior year, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this professionally. She's like, why didn't you tell me all this time? We could have been training you to do what. So anyway, so you have to audition to get into the different programs. So I got into NYU and I got into Wagner College on Staten Island. So which do you think I went to? I went to Wagner on Staten Island because my parents wouldn't let me go into the city.
Oh, okay.
That's how I ended up at Wagner.
My cousin graduated from Wagner, so I'm familiar with
the
school.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
It's still there.
Nice.
And so I
was theater your major or music?
Theater was my major. Theater and theater and communications at that time is what they called it. And so did shows there, and but of course was sneaking to the city as much as possible, and saw everything that I could possibly see. And we used to sneak into the second act of shows. You know, everybody would be out at intermission and you just walk back in with them and do standing room and that kind of thing, which was a lot of fun. You'd see the second act.
I may or may not have done the same thing at a time or two myself.
Yeah, you can admit it. No, you can't do it now. You can't do it now.
No, back in the day though. Yep. So did things change for you, your viewpoint on theater and the arts when you were in college, you know, getting more of a serious education about it? It wasn't just fun and games anymore.
Yeah, well, you know, once you do have to do the show more than just a weekend, then you realize, oh, this is like a real job.
Mm-hmm.
This takes a lot of concentration. You can't hang out. You can't do the things you would physically do with your body during the week because you have to be there for the show. So
what came most naturally for you in the process that you didn't really have to put much work into? And then what was the hardest part for you?
Singing was the easiest, and I think choreography was what I would say was the hardest.
Okay, because you didn't take any dance or anything growing up.
No, I grew up dancing, didn't even think of that kind of thing, and so that was all fresh from, you know, fresh scratch. But the singing I had been doing all my life, so that didn't.
So you go off to college. Are your parents and family supportive of the direction you're taking?
They were this is the way it goes. So they're like, you know, that you have to have a backup. You can't just say you're going to be that. So you have to learn to type and do all these, be prepared to do office work or wait to something else, because you're not going to just go up there and be in the show. So that was the only thing that I wouldn't say it's not supportive, but it was a practical sort of thing that they had in their mind. But they understood. They had taken me to shows my whole life, so you know, it's their fault. They couldn't really get upset.
Just real quick, have you ever entertained the idea of not being in the arts and at one time in your life? And what do you think your life would have turned into? What would you be doing today?
You know, at one time I did think about being a lawyer, but no matter what I was doing, I was always performing. Like back in the day, there was cabaret was really popular. There was, and then like kids now, they think you're supposed to just get paid for every show. When we first started out, we would do showcase that you didn't get any money for that. So even if you worked your day job, in the evenings you were going to rehearsals, and then on the weekends or whatever their schedule was, you'd be doing the show as well. So it's a different mindset now, because everybody thinks if I step on the stage, I'm getting paid immediately, and that didn't used to be. And I think it was a little better before because you really honed your craft. Now, people that are becoming famous aren't necessarily sustaining that fame because they don't have
anything. Yeah. So, do you remember what your first role on stage was as a kid, or?
I remember I was Rusty Charlie in Guys and Dolls.
Okay.
And then I was Ta in Flower Drum Song. And then I was Freddie in My Fair Lady. That was, and Lancelot in Camelot. That was high school.
Okay, cool. And what was your first paying job? Do you remember what role it might have been?
Yeah. I was in a musical called Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope. And that's
I'm not familiar with it.
So there's not set parts. You're singing. It was famous in the 70s, 80s, that musical. And
okay.
My first paying gig.
So what was it like getting paid for something that you love to do, that you honed your craft? I mean, your first paycheck, you must have been on cloud nine.
Terrific. It's like, mine made it. This is it.
That's great. Did your parents get to see you professionally?
Yes, many times.
That's good. And did they still say, hey, this may not last forever, you better be ready for that backup plan? Or did they finally?
Well, I was way ahead of them by then, because I was never a starving artist. That's one thing for sure. I always had a job.
Oh, okay.
So I worked at law firms as a messenger and a paralegal. And then I did a lot of jobs, office manager, a lot of different things for the in-between times, and even sometimes during the times.
Okay. So fast forward now, how did you get involved with the rep company that you're at now?
Well, we created it back on the back of starting with our singing.
When you say we, introduce us to who you.
Yeah.
How did that connection start? Yeah,
the CEO is A. Curtis Farrell. I went to school with him. One of the other young ladies that was also in the singing group with us, Ingrid Burton. So the three of us really started it. And then there was a fourth member of the singing group called Bambi Jones. And that's who we used to tour. And then when we did our first Ain't Misbehavin production, that was the cast as well. And then we added.
So you were all the performers, and then you decided you want to also represent yourself or produce your own show. Is that
right?
okay?
Right. Yeah, because the one thing dies down, and then you got to have something else to pick that up. So
who got all the business part of it together? Because you're all artists, and sometimes artists don't have that background in knowing what to do.
Here's something interesting. So Irving Street does PR and marketing as well, and party planning, as well as the shows we take out on the road. So one of our clients was DuPont, and we used to do industrials for them. And we would come up with jingles, and I would write the lyrics, and they would say, "Oh, this is the new product that's coming out. Can you do something with this?" And we perform the industrial.
Very cool.
And you're really doing PR work. And we are, okay. And so then we started to do that. And then at some point, Curtis got a connection. We used to do gospel things as well. And Curtis got a connection with McDonald's. And they were looking for somebody to do McDonald's Gospel Fest. And he started to work on that for them. But it wasn't all him. It was other people. And then after a couple of years, we took over the entire program.
So I need to back you up once again, because you're dropping names like DuPont and McDonald's. These are mega international conglomerates. How did you get that first in with DuPont? I mean,
because our singing group was performing at, I don't know if Mount Airy Lodge, which is which is a lodge, and we're performing there. And one of the ladies from DuPont saw us and said, "Can you do our industrial show that we're going to have here at Mount Airy in a couple of weeks?" So we said, absolutely. We came back and did it. And that relationship, they thought that we were so good with the crowd, because it was a lot of audience participation, which also comes from your acting ability. And so there was so much audience participation. They were like, "You're great for," because they do a lot of conferences where people are from all around the world. But the one thing that they all like is music. So we used to do a lot of Motown songs and things like that. So it ended up us doing like almost all of their industrials for like 3 or 4 years. Wow. So that connection. And then from there, things snowballed.
Yeah, that's cool. And then
if you were reading it in a book, you would say that wouldn't happen, but.
So Curtis gets the in with McDonald's, and you guys build trust with them over the years, and then you get the whole shebang.
Right. So now, we do all of their events that come up in the local area, the tri-state. So we're doing Black History Month and Gospel Fest. We do all of the mainly the Black things that they do for Outreach Harlem Week and the Caribbean Day Parade and all of those kinds of things. So
nice. So where did you guys get your marketing experience from? Was it just from doing it and learning the ropes by doing it? Okay. So I didn't know if it was something you guys studied in school on the side, or okay. Wow, that's impressive. That's really good.
Yeah, you'd be surprised what you can pick up. You sit in enough of those meetings, and well, this is.
Now, I know your company. You guys rep more than just Ain't Misbehavin', as you mentioned. You mentioned some of the titles before,
Absolutely.
And then, so do you cast all of those, and then you have the companies ready to go?
Yes. So the great thing is we have a whole stable of performers, and it's not always the same cast in every show, obviously, but we try to work with people that we trust and know will do a great job on the road, and we've been very successful with that so far.
That's fantastic. I want to get a little more into Ain't Misbehavin', because that kind of started it all off. Well, it didn't start it. You said a choral, your singing group did, but Ain't Misbehavin' was the first show. Now, for those who aren't familiar with it, it is a big famous show. As you mentioned, it's been around a long time. But for those who aren't familiar with it, it's basically a piano, and is it 4 or 5 singers?
It's 5 cast members and piano, but I mean, it starts off with just a piano, and then it goes into a 5-piece band.
Right, and you mentioned it's based on the music of Fats Waller.
Right.
He was a prolific musician, swing style. A lot of people called it stride, I think, stride piano style.
Right. Yeah.
And was he the one that created that, or just was named after what?
No, he was. He actually learned from the Lion Smith, one of his mentors, and he just learned to play by ear. He used to play in the movie theaters where they had the big organ, pipe organ, and he learned to play from that.
Cool.
So he learned all by ear. He was a very talented guy, and he used to write all these songs, and he would go and, in Tin Pan Alley, which is what they had back then. That was prior to the Brill Building. He would write songs, and they would sell the song here, and they would sell the same song over here, and they would sell it again. They had a whole bunch of things. Him and Andy Razoff used to write a lot of songs.
So they created a musical around his. They often call it a tribute to the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s and 30s.
Right.
And people may not know what the Harlem Renaissance is about.
Right.
I don't know if you want to talk about it, or it was basically
Sure.
Early Manhattan clubs, because clubs were segregated back then, or no?
They were segregated. Well, actually,
Okay.
like the Cotton Club, you could work in the Cotton Club, but you couldn't bring your family and sit down at a table. So the Harlem Renaissance was basically, there was such an activity of talent, and they all lived in Harlem because that was one of the segregated areas where Black people could live at the time. So there was poets and writers, authors, all the musicians, and then so it became such a hot place that everybody wanted to go there, and so that's the basis of the Harlem Renaissance. And so there was a few shows based on the Harlem Renaissance. You get Yubi and Sophisticated Ladies and Ain't Misbehavin'. There's a couple others, but those were the most successful, and so they celebrate that era.
Now, Ain't Misbehavin' started out before it went to Broadway. I don't know if it was intended to ever go to Broadway originally, but it started out in a club, my understanding, and it was really a long-running thing. They performed, night after night to these sold-out crowds, and just gained by word of mouth this huge popularity. But then it went on to win several Tonys too. Once they brought it to Broadway. So, as you mentioned, had Mel Carter, and you go ahead.
We had the awesome privilege of in 2019. We worked with Richard Maltsby, Jr., which was one of the originators of the show.
Right.
He actually wrote the vocals and many parts of the show, and so he had a lot of anecdotes about that first cast and how the show came about. But yeah, it was a little cabaret, and they put a lot of work into it. But it started out as a little cabaret, and then got picked up and said, we can do something more with this. And it was funny because the transition from the little cabaret to the stage, actually, they didn't change a lot. So if you see Ain't Misbehavin', there's no pyrotechnics. There's just the piano and those singers, and they're working their butts off. So that's how it came about, because it was a cabaret, and then they decided not to change it, and it's still.
And I think that's probably going to give you guys some advantage, I guess, when the world kind of reopens from this pandemic, because you don't have mega sets and huge crew and everything else you have to worry about. It's a small cast, and so that might help you guys get out on the road first.
Absolutely, and that's why we've been able to sustain all these years, is because most of our shows are like that, and we can go to niche places. It's not a huge bus and truck situation. It's very niche, and anybody, even a one-night stand, we can make it happen. So
that's fantastic.
Or if a show drops out, like that, we've had the cases where somebody booked something and they couldn't make it, and then they can just call us up because we already know the show. So
that's fantastic. Fats Waller. Now I did a little bit of watching. So there's a lot of really great videos. Thank goodness, people captured that. And he seems like a character. Like, there's a lot of tongue in cheek, a lot of I want to say innuendo, but sometimes he's pretty blatant too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the only way they could get away with some of that stuff, was to keep it low. Like, the people in Harlem absolutely knew what they were talking about, whereas your white radio listeners downtown, they flew. So that's.
Are you able to give us an example?
Okay, so let me think. There's one line in Squeeze Me, where the young lady says, one of the piano keys they play is The Little Boy in the Boat, which was, innuendo for a G-spot. And it's played very lightly in the background, but of course all those jazz musicians knew, and they would always laugh because how did he get away with but they're playing things live in the studio. They're one takes and all that kind of stuff, and they just got away with a lot of things, even on the live radio performances they used to do.
And you know, a lot of it, like you said, was kind of hidden to the
Mhm.
masses that didn't know about it. But then you have the Viper's drag.
Oh yeah, and that's out there.
That seems
That's
pretty
very
obvious
out.
and direct.
That's
How
quite.
did that get away, you know, in the time that the musical came out? How did they get away with something like the
Well,
Viper's drag?
that I, they really wasn't. It wasn't illegal.
Oh, okay.
It was done in jazz clubs and that kind of thing, but it wasn't illegal. It was more like, you're not supposed to do that. That's a bad thing to do. But it wasn't like it was now illegal.
Gotcha.
Another great example is Cash for Your Trash. Now, your trash was your wares for the prostitutes. That was their wares.
Wow. Okay.
Trash, but he turned it around to be during the war effort, when you turn in tin cans and that kind of thing, you would get cash for your trash. So that's how he
Okay.
did that song.
So clever. Now I
Yeah,
read we're talking about Waller. His philosophy in life was that it's a journey meant for pleasure and play, and that's really
that's how he.
totally noticeable.
Yeah,
It's very obvious in Ain't
yeah,
Misbehavin'. And I think that's why it resonates to audiences even still today. It's just a fun escape from life, and but it also points to a lot of things that happen in life. What
absolutely.
what resonates about that show with you to want to continue doing it for so many years? You've produced it for what, about 20 years now or
Yeah,
so?
yes,
Yeah.
probably 25, I think.
So you got to love something to go that long with it. So
Absolutely. And you know what? We have done it when it was first original. It was a fourth wall. I don't know, you know what that means. Like, you didn't really have audience participation, but when we do add the audience participation. So
Mhm.
the step, it's different every night. The audience is different. They're not expecting us to come out and offer them the reefer, or sit in their lap and that kind of thing. So it's always new. We bring people up on stage in our version as well, so that makes it fresh. And the music, you can't beat it. And when the
Mhm.
harmony is really kicking, it's so well written. The harmonies and everything is so well written. It's a pleasure to sing and perform it. So yeah, it's fresh. It's
Mhm.
fresh.
That's great. Now, do you have a favorite? What's your favorite song out of the whole
Well, I
show?
like Viper's Drag because that's usually what I perform.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay.
so that's always a kick for me because you never know what you're going to get. The people are so, depending on the crowd, some of them grab for the joint and some of them say, oh no. Please. So that's always fun for me. But the
Nice.
show is great. And then the genius of the show, it's all fun and games. It's all this laughter. And then about three songs before the end of the show, you get Black and Blue. And that really nails it home because it's really what Black people were feeling on the
Mhm.
inside, even though they've been laughing on the outside.
Now, bring that to our current situation today. How does that? How does someone who's experienced that in today's world resonate with that? Is it the same as it was back then, or is it a different way now?
It's a different way. You put it a good way. It's a different way. I really felt this year, especially being shut in and everything that's going on with Black Lives Matter and the killings, and it's really, really, it's depressing, but also the ray of hope is that everybody's seeing it. So it's not a secret. It's not
Mhm.
hidden. It's really out there and obvious. And the response that people are giving, for the most part, is positive. That our white brothers and sisters are joining us in the fight, and it's not a big secret, like that they've come out and told people, oh yeah, your parents tell you this is how you react when the police come, or this is how you act when you go in the store, and that kind of thing. Now it's out in the open, and people are like, oh, I never even thought about that before, and so now it's sort of.
So the next time that song is able to be performed in front of a live audience, do you think it's going to change at all for the performer, the internal thoughts and motivation?
well well not for the performance because we live it
Okay.
every day, but
Right.
the audience will get an extra layer
Hmm.
of understanding when they hear it.
That's great. And you want to wrap up? How does the show end? What is the high note that it leaves everybody on?
Okay, so of course then they've got to make it happy again. So
Hmm.
there's a huge medley of all the hits that he made famous, and then there's a big vocalese to Honeysuckle Rose at the very end, and we're singing to the top of our lungs, pretending to be musical instruments, and that's how it goes out on a high note.
Hmm.
It's
That's
awesome.
great.
It's
That's
awesome.
great. What's been some of your favorite feedback you've gotten?
Oh, from this show? Oh, people love it. They're like, oh, we didn't know any of those songs, but now that we've heard it, it's a lot about the performance itself. Because a lot of people, especially young kids, they don't know any of these songs, but the performance itself is so animated, it's so well put together that they end up loving it as much as their parents and the grandparents that knew the songs actually.
That's great. We only have a few minutes left, but I definitely want to ask, how is your company surviving to get to the end of the pandemic? What are you guys doing right now? I mean, the whole world shut down.
Yeah, it's been rough. Luckily we've been able to fall back a little bit on the other parts of our business. So we helping people do a lot of virtual events online, like gathering together singers and getting all of that kind of thing together for different clients that are still having meetings through Zoom and they need to pump up the volume a little bit. So we've been helping with that kind of thing, but nothing like, it's really terrible. Like everything that we do has contact. If it's events for McDonald's, events for like, we couldn't do Gospel Fest this year. We couldn't do any of the live parades or conferences, that kind of thing. So yeah, it definitely was a huge hit.
So how do you think when the world reopens, how do you think your business is going to be changed?
I think it's going to my fingers are crossed that everything's going to pick up even better than it was before, because people are going to be so desperate to get out, to see something, to enjoy and act and all of that kind of thing.
That's what my intuition's saying too. I hope we're both right. But as far as the other part of your business that's picked up, do you see that continuing? And and then on top of having to get back to live events again,
that would be
an explosion for you.
I mean, we would have to open up a new skill set, so that'd be great if we still continue to use it. Like our Black History show this year will be virtual. And
you cut up a little bit. Can you say that again?
Oh yeah, like our Black History show in 2021 will be virtual.
You want to talk about that real quick? Tell us about that show.
I wrote a Black History show that we tour in the school system in the tri-state area for McDonald's. And so it's 4 performers live singing and doing poetry, and they take you from slavery all the way to present day, Barack Obama. And this year, of course, we'll add the new vice president. And so we're looking forward to that. But this year, it'll be virtual. So we'll film it and offer it to the schools that way.
So Ron, how do people learn more about you? How do they contact your company?
So urbanstreetrep.com. And of course, our office number 973-643-6262. We also have shows running. Well, we'll have shows running not only at Misbehavin, but Smokey Joe's Cafe, Five Guys Named Mo, Sophisticated Ladies. All of our rep shows will be ready to go in 2021 when we're all clear, when we get the all clear.
That's great. And they could also contact Love Productions, I believe.
Love Productions, any day of the week, any hour.
That's great.
Absolutely.
I also have to, I had a question, but it totally escaped me. Sorry about that. So, how do you keep your cast members and everything? How are they staying fresh with the show and during this time when you can't even get together to rehearse?
Well, here's the thing. So, because we're a rep company, we're not doing the show around the clock. So there's always spells when nobody's doing it, but we are like trained seals. The minute we hear the music, we just pop right back into place. So
awesome.
Those parts are very hard to learn, so you don't really forget them.
Well, thank you. It's been a great meeting and speaking with you, Ron. And I look forward to working with you, bringing you onto my stage someday.
We're happy to come anytime.
And I want to thank Artists on Lockdown and Steve Love and everybody, Ben Wheeler, our production guy in the background. It's been a really fun time, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Take care, everybody. Be safe.
Thanks. Thank you.